Faith Forged in Fire, where we dive headfirst into the unique challenges and triumphs that comes with being a firefighter, all while exploring what it means to live out a biblical worldview. Join us as we find hope, perseverance, and faith in the midst of the heat and chaos. Welcome to the podcast. Well, there it is. It's been a while, but we're back. Faith Forged in Fire. Welcome to the podcast. We are calling this the Faith Forged in Fire Rekindle. And I hate to use those words. Rich, why? Tell somebody who doesn't know the fire service why I don't want to use those words.
Rekindle is when you've been to a structure fire. And, of course, the object is to put the fire out and have the fire remain out is generally the goal. Rekindle is when you've missed a hot spot. Somehow it's rekindled and you have a fire going again. It's pretty much the second worst word compared to the Q word, which is quiet.
Right.
Yeah. Rekindle's not a good thing.
Never fun,
No.
Especially when you've been out all night and you get back. You finally get cleaned up, get in bed, and phones drop again for the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And normally the brothers from the local stations, they remember that too.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You'll hear about it for a couple
Right.
weeks afterwards. Yeah.
So this is a good thing, though. This is a good thing that this is our rekindle of a podcast that went for quite a little while. We had a good time with that. However, people probably are already understanding that the voices that they're hearing they're different. At least one of them is different. So let's hit the elephant in the room. Rich is not Jason.
No, you can afford me.
Right. So I don't even remember when our last podcast was, but it was quite some time ago.
It was.
And life just kind of took over, both for Jason and I. And Jason said, hey, I think it's best if we let this ride. And I was in 100% agreement. I was thankful. Sometimes when life gets real busy, even things you really enjoy, things that are good, you just kind of have to let them set aside for a while.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and then his book took off really well, I think. Probably a little bit better than what he thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And it's worked into a movie now. So
right.
That's
so
why
he's working on
so
a movie.
busy.
He's got a second book coming out, a devotional book.
That's super exciting to hear that things are going really well for him.
He's been ridiculously busy, as have I. But it's kind of set in the back of my mind for a long time. I felt like we had something good, something that could be helpful. And I don't think there's a lot of content in the space that we're in. There's plenty of firefighting type, mental health, all that stuff out there. But within the space of bringing your Christian faith into the fire world, there's not a ton out there.
Not found much, no.
So it's kind of bothered me, and as much as I was glad to let it go, it's bothered me. And then you and I were talking, and it just kind of one thing led to another, and we said, hey, let's kick this thing back off again. I talked to Jason, and Jason said, yeah, go for it. He actually was thinking the same thing, that he didn't really have time for it, but really wished that we could find a way to make this run again. So the cool thing is Jason is 100% behind this, and we're going to hear Jason many times. Jason will be what do we call him? Like a regular, I think. Not all the time. Yeah, he's more than willing to come on whenever we can. And then we've got somebody else, another new voice. Shall we call him the rookie? Right.
That would be appropriate.
Yeah. So, but that'll be
excited
fun
to hear that. That'll be an exciting thing.
Right. We've got, between you and I, quite a bit of fire service experience. And so we're bringing on somebody fresh out of the academy who actually also just kind of has a heart for this podcast and wants to help out. So you guys will meet him in time. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned.
Yeah, we got to get me broke in before we bring another rookie on this show.
Exactly. Chief is the rookie today. Yeah. How's that feel?
Yeah, that's, I don't know if this is nervousness or anxiety or what it is, but yeah, it's a little different. I'm not used to this. So, it's one of those, I guess, stand up and teach in front of 20, 30 people, and it doesn't bother me, but I don't know.
All right. No different than keying up the mic and the whole county hearing you.
That's true, too. But this could go nationwide, worldwide, and I think our message today or, in this podcast is a lot more important than
probably is
how to throw a ladder up against the side of a house. So
yeah, I agree. And I'm, again, just really looking forward to this. So what can we expect, Rich? What can we expect out of this podcast?
Well, I think probably what we're going to do mostly is just talk about firefighter stuff and how things biblically can work into our lives. We see a lot of things, and a lot of times those things build up and cause issues. And I think if you have a biblical background and a Christian background, those things will really help you through those things. They have me. I mean, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's made a huge difference in my life. And not everybody knows it.
But they will.
They will, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to enjoy is we're going to try to get some special guests in here that have a story.
Yes.
They're not all going to be dark and miserable and those kind of things. We're going to have some lighthearted days, you know, and that's probably where the rookie is going to come in. We might drill him and, come up with some things. But, yeah, I'm hoping that people walk away with this with a little bit of understanding of what we do for firefighting and also how Christ will help you through some of those dark days.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to put it. And so I think you hit on it. We want people who are not firefighters, we want them to feel welcomed, and we want them to listen to this and maybe gain a more appreciation and understanding for firefighters. There will be times that we will speak to you if you're listening and you're just enjoying this podcast, but you're not a firefighter, first responder, that we'll speak to you in different ways. But we also want to be able to speak to those who have been doing this for a long time, whether they're career firefighters, they're volunteer firefighters, whatever.
Or not even firefighters, or thinking about getting into being a firefighter.
Yeah, there's a lot of value, hopefully. That's our goal, is to bring a lot of value.
Because I know some people that never dreamed about being a firefighter, didn't even want anything to do with being a firefighter, and here they are, firefighters,
Are you talking about somebody specific?
I think so.
Okay, well, maybe that's our cues. What we want to do today is introduce ourselves for those who don't know us, is just kind of introduce ourselves and let you know who we are so that you kind of understand the background where we're coming from as we talk about these things. And then we're going to dive in the next episodes, some even deeper things. So let's start with you, Chief.
Oh, me? I'm the rookie. You're supposed to start.
Let's just go back, because you and I, this is what's really cool. You and I come from, not only were we raised very differently, but even our path into the fire service is very different. And I want people to understand that, because as this podcast goes, that's going to impact the way we see things.
Right. So I kind of got into the fire service. I hate to age myself. Wow, probably mid-70s. I was 9 years old. My dad was a firefighter in a small town north of where we're recording. And he was a firefighter. My uncle was a firefighter. My dad's uncle was a firefighter. I think it was my dad's cousin was a firefighter, all in the same fire department. So it was kind of a running joke that whenever the whistle went off, that was back before everybody had pagers, they had an actual whistle.
Yeah.
If you've never heard one, it's kind of like a tornado siren, but a little bit different pitch. And when that went off, we always laughed because it was a family reunion. When my brother and I got there, Dad would be doing firefighter things, and my brother and I would play on the trucks, wash the trucks. If it started to rain, we might go roll the windows up in the guys' cars.
This is at like 8 years old, right?
8 or 9 years old, yep.
Okay.
Yep, we had a pool table, so we'd play some pool once in a while. Back then, the dispatcher was actually in the upstairs of the fire department working the radio, because that was before central dispatch or anything like that. So if that guy needed something to drink, we'd run on downtown and get the dispatcher something to drink, those kind of things. So I pretty much grew up in the fire service.
Okay.
And then later on, my brother was a firefighter for a while. So he got there, then he moved out of town, so he quit being a firefighter. And then about 2002, my son found a piece of a flashlight laying alongside the road. And we had 3 kids, and he wanted to return this for the fire department. He thought it was pretty important to have this back. Happened to be the deputy chief lived right next to me.
Oh.
So while the deputy chief was there, the chief came over, and William walked over and handed him the piece, and then it's kind of like, hey,
Okay.
Shouldn't your dad be a firefighter? And Laura and I talked about it. The wife and I talked about it, and we agreed that it'd be a good thing. So I actually was in the academy on a Monday, and I got hired on Thursday. So I was actually in the academy before I got hired.
You got hired.
And that was in 2002.
Okay.
Yep. So,
all right. So you grew up around it, and then you've been 21 years.
A long time.
Give or take, because we'll talk about this, but there was a little break in there for you.
Yeah. Like everybody, well, hopefully not everybody, but a lot of people, the calls piled up on me.
Yep.
So I just I needed to take a break. Yeah. Whether you want to call it a mental health break or what, I just needed to step away from it. So I stepped away from it for, I don't know. I didn't keep track really.
We were talking about that before we started.
Yeah.
Neither one of us really knows how long that was.
I'm going to say it was a year.
Okay. Yeah, that seems right to me.
Yep. And then the chief where I'm at now, he was going to retire, step away from it. So the township asked me to come in and do it. So it was a while. I think we'd talked about it for 2 or 3 weeks. Yep. And wife and I actually flew to Washington on a little vacation, and we talked long, probably way too much about it for the 7 days that we were there, and decided that it would be a good move for me.
Because this is a big deal for our listeners to understand. For one thing, you had been, so when I met you, we'll talk about how I met you, how I got on the fire department, but when I met you, you were a captain. Then you took your time off. And what they were asking you to do was, so you had not really been back. I mean, you kind of came back, but you weren't running a lot of calls still in that time. And now they're asking you to not only be the chief, but then I think that kind of came right alongside of, or maybe it wasn't quite alongside of, then adding you as a full-timer.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of some easy dates to remember. Ironically, they hired me as the chief on April Fool's Day. So they kind of hooked me into it. I told them that I'd give them a year just to see how it went. It was one of those, do I have what it takes? I didn't want to let the guys down by not being the right leader, the right coach. So then the guy that was the full-timer then, he found a better job, better paying job. Can you imagine that? A better paying job than being a firefighter?
Especially in a small town.
Yep. So in October, I quit a job that I'd worked at for 25 years and ended up becoming the full-timer too.
Right. So for context, right, this is not, you are the only full-timer. This is not a 24/7 type of thing. You are the only full-timer, and it's to help cover days.
Correct. Yep. Monday through Friday, get there 6:30 in the morning, and I'm supposed to be out of there at 4:30, but you know how that is in firefighter time, 5:30.
Right. And then once you're off, you're still doing the paid on call thing for the same department. So you're still running, you're just not there paid.
Yeah. Correct.
So that's kind of Rich's story. So you kind of have an idea when we're talking where we're coming from.
And then somewhere in there, the old deputy chief brought up this guy that he knew that lived south of us, and said, man,
he was lieutenant then, by the way.
And man, I know a guy. I think he'd be a really good chaplain for our station.
I was going to say, I got roped in not by, hey, we'll come be a firefighter.
No, you got roped in to be a chaplain.
Right.
Yeah, and then the bug bit you.
Yeah. So you go all the way back to the summer of 1999. I was doing my internship. My full-time job, my paid job is a pastor. So you will definitely hear that coming out in our podcast. It mixes with being a firefighter, so you're going to hear that. And so I was doing my internship in Michigan. That's where we're both from, but I was doing it over in the Thumb area. We're from the west side now. And my pastor at the time, he was a Michigan State Police chaplain, and I just saw some of the impact that he had that summer on people who you normally wouldn't have impact with. And it really sat with me, and I kind of decided then, hey, I need to do this. I need to be a chaplain somewhere. I was working bivocationally. I was kind of a part-time associate pastor, youth pastor, and then I was working full-time as well. And there came a point in time where I was able to work less in the secular job and do pastor stuff more. But that didn't last long. But during that time, I said, okay, maybe this is the time. So I started talking to the departments around us. I actually lived on the very edge of the line for a different jurisdiction. And they said, no, we've already got a chaplain. Talked to you guys, the lieutenant at the time who went to our church, and he said, no, we've already got a chaplain. And then I was actually homesick one day. I remember it pretty clearly. It was a Wednesday, and I was homesick, and the phone rang, and I thought, why is he calling me? And he knew I was, I think he knew I was sick because his kids were in my youth group and stuff, but he called me anyway. So I'm like, why is this guy calling me? And he said, hey, are you still interested in being a chaplain? And this was several months, might have even been a good year after I had been turned down. And I said, of course I am. So very distinctly in my mind, I tell this often, when I showed up there that first day to kind of do the interview thing and get acclimated, the chief, which is a different one than we've talked about, the chief at the time, she asked me, she said, do you have any desire to be a firefighter? And my answer, I remember it clear as day, my answer was no, absolutely not. If my wife caught me running into burning buildings, I shouldn't go home.
Whoops.
So I've been living in a tent for several years. No.
Yeah. But you got a nice tent. It's a great tent. 3-season tent, because you need that in Michigan when it starts to snow.
Well, the Lord works in the way the Lord works, right? So I jump in as a chaplain, and I knew that if I was going to earn any respect with you guys, that I was going to have to show up for calls. I was going to have to be all in, and so that's what I did. I would show up for fires. I would show up for medical calls, whatever I could do. And just was a gopher. I'd grab stuff off the truck, bring you whatever you needed. Eventually, then you guys started putting a hose in my hand on the outside and just saying, hey, put this out. Put the wet stuff on the red stuff.
And you're a great asset because, my understanding, and I only have the one station, is that what does the chaplain do? Well, when you lose a patient and the family needs support, you call the chaplain. The chaplain comes in. He's got the worst job. He has to deal with and, help the family that just lost a loved one.
A lot of tough things you got to work through in those moments.
Or if bad things happen and you had a really bad call, sometimes they come in and just help support the guys that way.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, I've always thought the chaplain was just support, spiritual support.
Right. Spiritual, mental type.
But you were different. I mean, you jumped in both feet. I mean, you're one of the best firefighters I know. You've got leadership abilities. You've got all these other things. So it's not like when the chaplain shows up, you go like, oh, chaplain's here, make sure you don't trip over him or, do that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, don't let him trip over you because he's going to be grabbing a hand line and probably putting a hurt on you if you don't get out of the way because he's going to go do his thing. So, yeah, I was so glad we roped you into being in there because what an asset, in more ways than one, but it also, if you're not a firefighter, I don't know, maybe it's just different, but when you're on scene, it just seems to be better for us, like when a chaplain is there.
Isn't that's weird to me, but I see that. I've experienced that almost like a sigh of relief or a calm. Not that I can do anything, there just seems to be a certain peace with people.
And it's strange because it's like, the Holy Spirit is there.
Right.
Whether you're there or not, he's there.
He's doing his thing.
But when the chaplain shows up, then it's almost like, oh, hey, hot dog, the Holy Spirit's here. We've got help. And it's like, no, you're the most modest chaplain I know. It's like, no, I'm just PJ.
Right.
Get out of my way and give me a hand line. So, yeah, it was a huge blessing to have somebody like you come on board. And you had your work cut out ahead of you. I mean, you earned a lot of respect, but I think it was that respect and that time that you put into it that really let guys go like, hey, not only is he Pastor Joshua or PJ, as we call you, or the chaplain, he's a brother. He's been here for us. And that really opened up the doors and gave you a lot of opportunity to change lives.
Well, that was my goal. I learned pretty quickly that you don't just wander into a fire station and become one of the brothers because you're there. You have to earn that.
Right.
And so that was my goal all along. What I didn't expect was that the firebug was going to bite me, or better yet, we would say the Lord had a plan. Right? Psalm 37 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." And this is one of those situations where I have experienced that firsthand. That doesn't mean that God's just going to give you whatever you want. He says that when you're delighting in Him, He'll give you whatever you want. Well, when you delight in Him, the things I want are the things He wants. So as I continued to pursue that opportunity, He began to change my heart. And now the thing that I wanted was to become a firefighter. So I ended up, I'll never forget this. We got a new chief, and things were not, people were quitting, and it was kind of a rough time in the department at the time. And there was a lot of calls going unanswered. We were struggling. So finally I said to our chief, which is different than the one that hired me, I said, "Hey, if you want me to go and get my medical license, I will." My mindset was, I'm already showing up for fire calls. I can already grab a hand line. I can already grab the tools. I can run a pump. I can do I'd already done all that stuff. I'd run the pump for you guys before and done all that before I even went to the academy. So I'm not going to put the time into the academy, but I will get my medical license so I can run medical calls and help that way. And so I stepped in Chief's office after a meeting one night when we were talking about needing more help. And I said, "Hey, if you want me to, I will go get my medical license." And he looks at me and he said, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to send you to the academy too." And I said, "Okay." And I walked away. And on the way home, I'm like, what did I just get myself into?
How nice of a tent do I have?
But Lord works, and as He was working in my heart, He worked in my wife's heart. And when I came home and told her that, we were ready to go. That was a rough year. Amy and I were married for 10 years, didn't have any kids, just kept praying and asking the Lord for kids. And then 10 years later, He decided to bless us with a little girl. So she was just born. This was the first year of her life. And now I'd go to work all day, and then I would drive about 45 minutes farther away from home and take my take MFR class. And then I'd drive home, study, do whatever, go to bed. We'd usually put Olivia just in bed with us just because that was the most time I got to see her. I'd come home and wake her up. So we'd study. I'd do all that, back to work, back to class, made it through medical class, and then just had a couple weeks off, and it was straight into the academy. So the whole year, I look back now, I don't know how I did it, but I'm thankful for the Lord doing that, because as people are going to find out as they listen, God has blessed my efforts, I guess you could call it that, in the fire service, and God has opened up some really cool doors. So I started with you at your fire station, and I'm still technically, I keep trying to get fired somehow.
Not happening.
And I'm still technically the chaplain there, trying to figure out how I can help you out a little bit more. And then the town where I live, which is 15 minutes north of you, I'm a firefighter. And then as of the first of this year, I got a little taste, starting to get a taste of the full-time gig, the career gig. I was in a class and met the chief for the Grand Rapids Fire Department here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. In our world, that's the second largest in Michigan. So if people listening from all over, it's a great department. And I was asked to be the chaplain there. I'll go down and do 24-hour shifts, different things with them, whatever I can do. So I'm getting a neat. It's fun for me now to get a taste outside of the volunteer world and in the career world. So we kind of bring a whole lot of different things to the table.
Yeah, that's an exciting opportunity for you right there. What an amazing door to have open for you.
It's been so ministry-wise, the door is incredible. And then from a firefighter standpoint, now I can train with them anytime I want. I can get my medical CEUs. Just riding they call them machines, just riding the machines with them, the apparatus, running calls, and watching how they do things. Just there's a lot that I can learn, and been a lot of fun, just a ton of fun. And there's been a lot of pinch me moments where I'm like, is this for real? Is this happening?
It has been kind of a topic of discussion quite a bit lately.
It has, yes. Yep.
Yep. It's been a great move for you. So yeah. I can't wait to see where that goes for you.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm curious about this. I'm curious about this podcast. I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I feel like, today we didn't have a whole lot. You know what?
I should shut my pager off when we're doing a podcast.
When we're doing a podcast. Anyways, I know we didn't have a ton today to talk about, other than to just kind of introduce ourselves to people, and I think we were able to do that. But you mentioned something that I want to just touch on real quick. The year-ish that you took off for mental health. And you mentioned as you started, as we were talking about the faith side of things, what that's done in your life. In the next episode, we're going to let people get to know you a little bit more, because this is really special for me, because 10 years ago, why did I say 10 years? Way more than 10 years ago. Whenever I got on the fire department with you,
right,
neither one of us in a million years would have thought we would be sitting here doing a podcast, talking about Scripture, talking about the Lord, talking about fire.
If we went back 10 years ago, I would have lost a lot of money to you on that bet. A lot of money. It still is something that, the first day I walked through your church doors, everybody was so happy to see me and they were hugging me. And when I got here, I was actually expecting to get struck by lightning. So, yeah, to say that I've come a ways is probably an understatement. But, yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about that next episode, and we're gonna dig in. It's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a fun one for people. Kind of kick off the tone of what we're going to be doing here.
Sounds like a deal.
All right. Well, hey guys, that is it for today. We're going to try to keep this thing at about a half hour. So, we're out, right?
We'll try. Half hour is going to be tight.
It is going to be tight. We might have some that are a little bit more.
Maybe.
But we're going to try to keep it there. Hey, make sure you tell people about our podcast. We really want to pull people in. Firefighters, non-firefighters, first responders, non-first responders. Pull them in. Tell them about us.
We'll even let cops listen.
Ooh, will we?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We love our brothers.
We'll see you in the next one.